This week, we have the pleasure of a guest who is coming to be a part of our seminar. So Dr. Bhat is an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Toronto. And he is currently a staff psychiatrist based at two depression centers, the Center for Depression and Suicide Studies at St. Michael's Hospital and the Paul Hansen Depression Center at Toronto Western Hospital. And today he is going to be talking with us about interventional psychiatry, the clinical and emerging research perspectives that he has. And there's three pillars, or now they two, that they're emerging into two. But it's really exciting, cutting edge stuff, both with technology as well as pharmacology. And so with that, I will turn it over to you to take it over.
Okay, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to present. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to present. So I'll be really speaking about the program we've developed at one of the hospital systems where I'm based, which is St. Michael's Hospital. I do invasive brain stimulation at the other hospital site, which you mentioned at Toronto Western, which I won't be talking about today. So moving on, like disclosures, which I'm required to do. So I'll start off as to why we've developed this program and what actually motivates us to do the work we do. So that's the emblem of our program. And this is Albert Gargi, and he created this sculpture as a way to look at coping with loss and what people go through when they have significant loss in their life. It's also about giving hope. And our purpose within the program is to develop new interventions, new treatments for treatment-resistant mental illness. We also try to use it as a platform to understand why people know and why people don't. But at the end of the day, it's about people's stories and how we actually bring about a change in treatment-resistant mental illness. So I have three objectives today for the next 45 minutes. I'll take 10 minutes to give you an overview of how we have developed our program, the three pillars which Eric was mentioning before, and then what are the conceptual paradigms which actually underlie the interventional approaches, and then I'll speak about a few emerging research treatments and also on the digital side. So the fundamental conceptualization is that the brain is an electrochemical organ, and you can actually bring about changes on the electrical side or on the chemical side. And a lot of the focus has been on the chemical side. It's more recently, over the last 2 decades or so, that there's a renewed interest within the electrical side of how the brain functions. If you look at the history of ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, one of the oldest treatments out there, actually predates pharmacology. It's simple, you put two electrodes and you pass an electrical current, the brain seizes and it leads to an antidepressant effect. Don't really know how that happens. It's among the most effective treatments, if not the most effective, and other things don't work. So you can basically bring about changes on the electrical side. You can bring about electrical changes through magnetism, which I'll go over, and then other modalities, which I won't go over today, but we do have ongoing projects which involves using light and sound to actually bring about changes in the electrical function of the brain. Then there's psychotherapy. The field is really more towards combinatorial treatments, whether it's psilocybin and psychotherapy, brain stimulation and psychotherapy. So the idea is often that you need to prime the brain circuit before you actually target it with either pharmacotherapy or with brain stimulation. So I'll go over how we have developed our program in the next 10 minutes. So we have three pillars: a pharmacological pillar, a brain stimulation pillar, and a digital pillar. Each of the pillars has a clinical arm and a research arm. Clinical includes the emerging treatments, and some of these are treatments which only one or two hospitals actually operate within the public hospital system. we have one referral form for the entire province. So we get referrals from across the province. And everything we do within the program, clinical research, the access point is through this one referral form. So we have built it that way in a non-siloed manner. The physicians within our program are able to do the assessments for all the three pillars. We don't have the psychology folks working separately from the psychiatry folks. So it's really people working together with all the treatments brought around the patients. The clinicians, everyone actually works around the patient. So this is the flow of the program. So we have people who have not responded to first, second, third line treatments come to us. And that's the intake criteria for us. They've actually gone through standard first line, second line treatments. Then we sequence them through emerging pharmacological treatments, brain stimulation. And what you see in the center is the clinical arm. It's a digital program where people are able to download an app and a wearable, and we're able to do measurement-based care, which is the clinical arm of the digital pillar. But we're also able to do a number of other studies where we do data capture. So as an example, we have people TMS or receiving TMS or IV ketamine on whom we do app and wearable-based studies. So before they come into the clinic, during and after. And then, on the right-hand side, my right-hand side, you see the experimental paradigm. So, people may have had IV ketamine and they've not responded, they've not gone ECT. They then exit the clinical flow and they're actually part of the research trials. We are a front-end clinical program, so we do not exclude people if they don't want to participate in research. Our consent rates are about 80%, 80 to 90%. So, as I mentioned, we have brought the different modalities around the patient or the research participant in one place in a non-siloed manner. We also use the clinical platform to understand brain functioning, why people improve, why people don't improve, and what we can do to actually improve the response rates. Typically with something like TMS, routine TMS, 1/3 of people have significant improvement, another third have some improvement, another third don't. We're trying to understand in which third the patient falls, what can we do to get the other 2/3 to actually have the same kind of improvement as the other 1/3 has. So that's the other significant effort, and that's why we do this multimodal data capture. What's also unique about the program we have developed is all the three pillars are made possible because we work across disciplines. I work with anesthesia, that's why we have the ketamine program, the nitrous oxide program, work with psychology, that's why we have the psychedelics program. Within the brain stimulation, it's with biomedical engineering. So that's why we have that pillar. And the third, which is the digital pillar, is because we work with computer science. So it's the work is really made possible by virtue of people working across disciplines. So I mentioned about how we've brought in the clinical components around the patient. We've also tried to bring together the research components around the patient as well, and across disciplines, across institutions. So that's really an overview of our program. In the next 15 minutes, I'll give a quick overview of the clinical components. What is interventional psychiatry? What are the key elements of interventional psychiatry? And then I'll move over to the research aspects. So again, I'll situate you to this. I'll bring you back to this because a lot of what we do is based upon this. So I'll start off with the basic idea with interventional psychiatry. So the conceptualization of mental illness as arising out of abnormal neural circuit function and the ability to target specific nodes of the neural circuit corresponding to specific symptoms of mental illness. That's the core aspect of interventional psychiatry. You can target a precise hub within a network which is responsible for symptoms of a particular disorder. People have also called them circuitopathies, where you can do precise personalized targeting. When we do TMS, we are targeting a superficial node of the depression network, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. When I do deep brain stimulation, we are targeting a deeper node of the same depression circuit. But the idea is that there are different ways to get to that circuit. And if you target one node, the effects actually propagate right to the network. Some nodes are more effective. In some patients, some nodes are less. Why we do not know, and that's an ongoing area of work. Depression is the most well understood in terms of circuit aspects, and that's part of the reason why at this moment we have more interventional treatments for depression than for the other disorders. Although, every disorder is being actively examined. There are, it's only a question of time where we have almost every disorder where you can precisely target a node within the network and like that disorder. As an example, we have TMS approved for smoking cessation, we have TMS targeting the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, OCD, and almost every disorder is being actively examined with the same approach, to target a specific node within the circuit. So this is a busy slide. It's from Mike Fox. What the slides really can try to convey is that not only do you have nodes within a network underlying the disorder, but the nodes are actually shared across disorder. This is how patients present to the clinic. They don't have only depression. They have depression, they have pain, they have, multiple things. And this is partly because, there's a lot of overlap. What this also means is that you have shared elements across disorders. You can actually target specific nodes where if depression improves, symptoms of pain also improve. It gives you an opportunity to actually look at specific nodes where you could target more than one disorder, but also the non-shared elements become unique to that particular disorder. So this is interventional cardiology and interventional psychiatry. Side by side, from a conceptual point of view, if you were to look at it, with ECT, it is like defibrillation, you're shocking the heart, you're shocking the brain. It goes on like that, but you can see conceptual parallels. With ketamine, you're doing pharmacological cardioversion. With deep brain stimulation, it's like you're doing implanted pacemaker. But there are similarities in terms of, doing targeted interventions in a population which is treatment resistant. And the way we have developed our program is that we offer time-limited care. So we expect the referring physician to be able to take the patient back on completion of time-limited treatments, just like an interventional cardiologist or an interventional neurologist would do their procedure and actually send the patient back to the regular treating physician. We are very procedurally oriented in terms of what we do, whether it's ECT or TMS or IV ketamine. So I'll briefly go over ketamine and TMS as an overview and then move over on the digital side. So I've mentioned this, as the critical aspect in interventional psychiatry. What's the circuit? What's the target? What's the node within the circuit? And what are you doing to that node within the circuit? Are you upregulating it or are you downregulating it? The brain is a very complicated organ, and at the same parameters, different site in the brain is stimulatory, an alternate site is inhibitory. So it is really site-dependent plasticity. What you see here is the circuit which Helen Mayberg mapped out before she did deep brain stimulation for depression. And I mentioned that when we do deep brain stimulation, we actually put the electrodes in the deeper region of the brain. Whereas when we do EMS, we are doing a superficial node, but it is the same circuit that we try to target in different ways. So this is a busy slide, but it captures in one slide all the different modalities of brain stimulation. X-axis is by invasiveness. You go from subthreshold to surgical, and Y-axis is based upon focality. Are you, targeting a very focal region of the brain, or like ECT, where you're shocking the entire brain? We have treatments like deep brain stimulation, which is surgical, highly invasive, but also very focal. you're able to target a very specific region of the brain and stimulate it. This is ECT and TMS side by side. So we have electrical stimulation. Basically, you have two electrodes and you pass an electrical current, and it brings about a seizure in the brain. With magnetic stimulation, the idea is that you're using magnetic pulses. Magnetic fields can go right through the scalp and the skull, and when it comes in contact with an electrically conducting organ like the brain, remember I mentioned the brain's an electrochemical organ, it induces a focal electrical current. So you're able to bring about non-convulsive strengths of the electrical field, and that leads to change in neural activity. The underlying mechanisms are there's a lot of overlap between ECT, which is electrical stimulation, and TMS, which is magnetic stimulation. Now, TMS allows to change brain activity. I mentioned about upregulating the node or downregulating the node, but you can also actually measure brain activity in real time. That's an advantage with something like TMS, where you can do dynamic closed loop monitoring and also delivery of treatments. I'll just mention some I'll briefly mention the advances in TMS, because a lot of our research is based upon the third generation of TMS. So the first generation of TMS was where patients would come in and they would receive 30, 26 to 45 minutes of treatment per day. This non-inferiority trial done by my colleagues in Toronto and Vancouver basically showed that a 3-minute version of TMS is non-inferior to the 26 or 45-minute version. So this led to FDA approval in 2019, and then overnight, all the clinics started offering the 3-minute version as compared to the longer 45-minute or the 26-minute version. The question then was, why do people have to come for 3 minutes every day for 4 to 6 weeks? Can we actually, can we stack these treatments and accelerate the treatment schedule? So the third generation of RTMS is where people receive multiple treatments during the day, so 8 to 10 treatments a day, and the whole treatment course is finished over 3 to 5 days. So you take a brain scan, you find the region specifically to target, and you actually target it by the hour. I mentioned about the circuit basis of the disorder. So what the work from the Stanford group, they're particularly emphasizing is to look at the region within the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is most anticoagulated to the subgenual cingulate. So I mentioned about how you put the electrodes in the subgenual cingulate. We do deep stimulation. So it's the same network idea of actually targeting the network in a more precise manner, doing it in a repetitive manner, and finishing the treatment over a short course. So with that, I'll have 2 slides on ketamine, and then I'll move over to some of the research work we do, and then focus on the digital side. So ketamine has been a game changer for depression. This is partly because for 50 years, almost all of the research and the drug development was based on the monoaminergic system. There were minor tweaks in terms of medications being more tolerable. The side effect profile was different, but in terms of efficacy, the monoaminergic antidepressants are really not that different. Ketamine acts through an entirely novel mechanism, through the glutamatergic mechanism, and it also has a rapid antidepressant effect as compared to the 2 to 4 weeks that it takes for the traditional antidepressants to have efficacy. So it's been a game changer from that sense in terms of offering an alternate mechanism, and also for people who have not responded to the traditional antidepressants to have alternate options. Not everyone improves. Again, about a third have significant improvement, and another 20 to 30% have some improvement. You still have 40 to 50% non-response. But when people improve, it's rapid. People have, within hours to days, they actually have rapid antidepressant and rapid anti-suicidal effects. So this is just one history slide. I'm very much of a history buff. So this is Edward Domino, who discovered ketamine in 1965, reflecting back in 2010 on how, for many decades, patients actually reported that they noticed improvement. They had improvement in terms of the symptoms of depression, but it was really not picked up. And it took a long time before people actually came around to it. First studies, Yale, and then NIMH, and then the series of intravenous studies leading to the intravasal work by J&J, leading to approval in 2018. So it's been the mechanisms, and there was quite a bit of data suggesting that, for 20 years that ketamine may have an antidepressant effect, but it was not really taken up. Ketamine can be given through any conceivable route, really, IV, IM, intranasal, sublingual, oral, rectal. Its mode of administration is very flexible, and that's partly why it's on the essential medications list. And the intravenous is thought to have the most efficacy because of its highest bioavailability. It's 100% bioavailable as compared to the other routes. So we, within my program, really focus on intravenous ketamine, partly because on the research side, we understand the pharmacokinetics and the dynamics much better, and we can really do better dose response with IV as compared to the others. So with that, I'll move over to some emerging treatments and then focus on the digital side. So I'll speak a little bit about, I've primed you for the what people have demonstrated with ketamine and TMS, and we are involved in terms of developing the next generation of these treatments. So I'll start off with what may be of interest here with stellate ganglion blocks. So we did few studies looking at stellate ganglion block for treatment-resistant depression, not for PTSD. This was for depression specifically. And we are now doing studies where we're actually collecting digital data, looking at heart rate variability and other metrics to actually map out improvement in terms of symptoms along with peripheral measures of sympathetic activity. So the basic idea here is that, like in PTSD, with chronic depression, treatment-resistant depression, there's a sympathetic overdrive. You're actually blocking the sympathetic outflow and seeing whether that leads to downregulation in the higher centers responsible for this sympathetic overactivity. So we've done 2 trials. So this was a feasibility trial. We have an efficacy trial as well. I'll move over to nitrous oxide. The next couple of slides are really 1 or 2 slides to give you an overview of the ongoing research projects. If there's specific interest, people can feel free to reach out to me, or we can discuss it at the end. I want to move towards the digital side and spend most of the rest of the presentation on that. So this is work we're doing with nitrous oxide, also called laughing gas. We are repurposing, just like with ketamine, nitrous oxide as a treatment for depression. So we've just completed and we've submitted this work, nitrous oxide to room air. We've been actually funded by the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to do a trial comparing ketamine to nitrous oxide head-to-head. So this is the trial which we wanted to finish the other trial before we started this. So the nitrous oxide versus room air, the placebo control trial, and we are now a head-to-head trial comparing nitrous oxide and ketamine. Within the 3 pillars of the program we have developed, we have a unique opportunity to do head-to-head trials within the pillar like what you see here, nitrous oxide versus ketamine, or to do actually head-to-head between pillars. So you see one of our projects funded by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. We're working closely with the Stanford group who have developed the SAINT protocol, where we're doing a head-to-head trial of the SAINT protocol versus IV ketamine. So we're doing a pharmacological pillar versus a brain stimulation pillar. What we've also done is looking at new indications for ketamine and for brain stimulation. And we also looked at where within our hospital do we have large populations where there's a significant overlap with depression. So this is a trial which Rakesh is part of, where we're looking at IV ketamine for TBI and depression. So this is a trial funded by Veterans Affairs Canada, where we hope to recruit 60 participants with TBI and depression who receive a standard course of IV ketamine. We'll be doing brain imaging before and after. We have a large concussion program. We have the largest MS program in Canada. We have probably the second largest stroke program in Canada. And these programs, these patients have really high comorbidity with depression. And we're actually trying to understand, do symptoms of depression improve, but can we also have disease modifying effects on outcomes after stroke, outcomes after MS and then TBI. So this is work with a neurologist. Manav is a neurologist. And this is just an example of how we have brought this program together. So this is accelerated brain stimulation. We're actually taking the brain stimulation equipment to the bedside. So we deliver accelerated treatments when patients are actually admitted in the acute care facility, in the rehab facility, because it's not possible for them to come. And if you can actually finish treatments over 3 to 5 days, it actually maps well when they actually come for rehab. So we're trying to see if we can address the mental health issues and the medical issues simultaneously rather than sequentially. This is work funded by our hospital foundation, where we do the scans. We need the scans because we need to find the precise target for that particular individual. And once we have the target, we deliver the treatment over 3 to 5 days. So a couple of other clinical trials. So I do a number of clinical trials. So you'll see these one slide summaries of the clinical trials. So this is another project funded by the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. Again, this is also work with the Stanford group, where we're doing regular TMS, the longer, the 3 minute per day versus the 3 to 5 days, and we're mapping symptom improvement, with the regular versus the SAINT, the accelerated protocol, and we're also seeing the sustainability of one versus the other. So this is another trial which will be starting shortly. The next few slides are, our work on developing take-home modalities of brain stimulation. We want people to be able to self-deliver treatments at home. When people get better, they need to be able to self-deliver treatments at home. And, this is, we don't really know whether this will map out or not, but this is 5 to 10 years of work if it actually maps out. So this is a project funded by NARSAD, Brain and Behavior, worked with Ed Boyden's group at MIT, where they demonstrated that it's possible to target the subgenual cingulate or deep regions of the brain in animal models. We're doing the first in human trial, trying to target the same region in a non-invasive manner. So the simple idea here is that the brain is a high-pass filter, and the brain does not recognize when you go above certain frequencies. When you go above, let's say 200 hertz, the brain does not recognize the frequency. So we do 2000 hertz and 2001 hertz, or 2010 hertz. And where these waves interfere, that's the idea of temporal interference, the brain recognizes the difference. And it is 1 hertz or 10 hertz which actually drives neuronal change. So by by image-guided positioning of these electrodes, you're able to target deeper regions where these waves interfere. The rest of the brain does not recognize it. And where the waves interfere, the difference is what the brain recognizes. So we are doing proof of concept target engagement work, with temporal interference. So this is ongoing work. You see one participant here based upon the brain scan. That's the region we want to target, and that's the specific electrode placement for that particular participant. I'll move over to the last take-home modality we're working. We had a lot of difficulty getting this work funded because it sounds conceptually very simple. As you can see here, we titled it "Put a Smile a Day, Keep the Psychiatrist Away." And we did 2 trials. So we're trying to see whether we can target deeper regions of the brain superficially. So there's a rich body of literature suggesting that specific smile patterns are actually associated with functioning in deeper regions of the brain. So we did, I'll show you what it looks like in a moment. So we did the stimulation in healthy subjects, and we showed that it was able to modulate affect. Then we did an open label trial, as you can see here, with 10 sessions and then 40 sessions. It was an antidepressant effect. And then we went back to the Canadian Institute of Health Research saying that we'll do a proper sham control trial, which is what we're doing at this point. So this is a very, device which can be taken home if we actually demonstrate efficacy in terms of its antidepressant effect. So when we're positioning this is in some sense like what light therapy is. It's not meant for severe treatment-resistant depression. It does not have the efficacy of ketamine or TMS or ECT. But the vast majority of people have symptoms of mild and moderate depression. Severe depression, the population is much smaller, and when people improve, they move from severe to mild to moderate. We have mapped the neural circuitry here as to how the pattern facial muscle stimulation could lead to changes in the deep regions of the brain. In this case, it's the amygdala, and we have a sequence of 3 ongoing trials. One is an in-person study where people come in. It's in a controlled environment. We have 2 other trials where people actually send a picture of their face. We do 3D printing to come up with a specific mask that's personalized to that individual. So they're able to take home the treatments and self-deliver at home. There's Zoom, there's supervision virtually, but people are able to self-deliver the treatments. So this is really work with biomedical engineering, and we have the engineering program has the facility to put the sensors basically in any conceivable modality. So the 3rd trial we are doing is the same idea. The feedback we got from patients was that the 3D printed mask is a bit difficult to use continuously, and they wanted the sensor put into fabric. So we have actually designed the same idea. Patients take a picture of their face, send the picture. We design fabric-based mask that's personalized to that particular individual, and it delivers that pattern facial muscle stimulation. We have sequential trials where we do this within the scanner to also demonstrate that the neural circuitry which I mentioned is actually targeted when you do the stimulation in real time. So we're doing real-time fMRI where we do the pattern facial muscle stimulation, and we're demonstrating that this upregulation or downregulation targets. So with that, I'll move over to the digital pillar. I've given a broad overview of the work we do within the other 2 pillars. The digital pillar was really not something we were thinking of when I established the program a couple of years ago, but then the pandemic hit March 2020, and we could not do a lot of our clinical trials. We were funded, but our program essentially shut down, and we pivoted towards the digital pillar. And for almost 2 or 3 years, the digital work was all we were doing, and then we revived our other 2 pillars, and we brought the 3 pillars together. And this became a group. It was initially University of Toronto, Toronto Metropolitan University, which is another university in Toronto, and the two hospital systems I am based at, the St. Michael's and University Health Network, and then it became a group of universities and hospitals across the country, which I've mentioned. So we really brought together virtual reality with an app and wearable-based platform. So we have delivered real-life contexts in virtual immersive reality. We try to understand how people respond to stress in these virtual immersive environments. We do predictive analytics to actually demonstrate that the stress experience in the virtual setup actually correlates really well with stress experience in the same real life rendering of that virtual setup. So I'll give you a few examples where this is the paradigm. We do subjective and objective data capture in the virtual setup, and we continue similar subjective and objective data capture in the real life setup. So what we have done, which Rakesh has been part of with the IDEAS program within the Department of Defense, where we have simulated the projects were around moral injury, but also stress monitoring among frontline healthcare providers. So we simulated the ICU, we simulated the ward, and we had nursing professionals make difficult decisions in the ward or in the ICU in this virtual setup. Then we continue to monitor them with the apps and the wearables for 3 to 6 months in the real life, in the real ICU and in the real ward. And we showed that people who have excessive stress experience in the virtual setup actually have excessive stress experience in the real life setup as well. This initial work, with an approach towards developing the 4P medicine, preventive, predictive, personalized, participatory, was then picked up by a couple of other organizations like Canada Post and work we're doing in the northern part of Canada, which I'll go over in a moment. So as I said, we have, we digitize and we present real life events in virtual settings. We do personalized signatures of stress response in this virtual setting with the idea of trying to see if we can predict how it correlates with the real life stress experience. We do quite a bit of data-driven analytics to come up with this signature of stress response. So where our work is moving now is, when we started this whole body of work, the advancements in large language models that did not really exist. We're speaking about 2020, 2021, when these projects were actually funded. And our current emphasis has been in terms of integrating, generative AI into this work, whether it's within the virtual setup or whether it's with chatbots and conversational agents. So these are some of our collaborating partners within the Digital Interventions and Intelligence Group. And, it's been one grant, a second grant, a third grant. It's really brought together a number of our funding bodies in Canada and the US. In the next couple of slides, I'll briefly show how we are working with different populations with the same idea. Conceptually think of the virtual reality with the app and the wearable. It's a very similar idea. This is what I showed earlier about how we have brought digital monitoring into our clinic. We have studies where people who receive EMS or ketamine or these experimental treatments also undergo app and wearable-based monitoring. We have an ongoing trial, which again, Rakesh is part of, for PTSD, where we're doing, this is a digital trial. Psychotherapy is being delivered remotely. This is CPT, cognitive processing therapy, masked CPT with a single dose of psilocybin. So 7 days of CPT with a single dose of psilocybin being administered at the center midway, and it is an entirely digital trial with capture of app and wearable-based data before, during, and after. So this is, an idea. This is a good example of how we have actually brought the digital components together with the. This is another trial. So this is with eyesight. Their drug is Dayvigo, lemborexant, which is approved for insomnia. This is a whole new generation of drugs, just like, ketamine represents a whole new generation targeting the glutamatergic system. Lemborexant and the whole category of drugs there is targeting the orexin system for sleep. So that's a totally new neurotransmitter system, and there's a whole suite of drugs coming out targeting that particular system. So we are doing a trial where we're doing continuous digital data capture with apps and wearables, because this is a specific trial looking at sleep in residual, where people have residual insomnia with adequately treated depression. So we are doing continuous digital data capture. So that's in the clinic. So this is work I mentioned with the Department of Defense. We have completed 2 phases. So this was the work, with the phase 1, where we had the ICU setup, and then the phase 2, where we had the ward setup, and now we are, in discussions to launch phase 3, where we really want to integrate generative artificial intelligence in terms of chatbots and other elements to move this work forward. The same paradigm, Canada Post, which is our national post, they have high rates of burnout and dropouts, and they wanted us to do something similar, like we are doing with the Canadian military. So we're building immersive real-life scenarios where Canada Post employees can go through these scenarios and see what would be alternate ways of thinking, feeling, behaving in terms of these stressful scenarios. And we're doing 6 months to 1 year data capture with apps and wearables in their real-life work environments. We have international collaborations as well, Brazil, and a couple of other countries. This is my penultimate slide. So this is work where we are particularly excited about. This is more recently funded. This is work funded by the National Research Council, and we have taken this same combination of virtual reality with apps and wearables to improve mental health in northern part of Canada. So what's the main point here? So we have 6 family physicians providing care for the whole territory. And these are very far-flung areas, and actually the family physicians fly to these remote communities every 2 months. In between, no one really knows what is happening, and we wanted to do real-time data capture, and we wanted to train frontline providers. It's really nursing that they provide all the care in these communities. So we're using virtual immersive reality to train people on the front line to recognize common symptoms of mental illness, depression, suicide, death by suicide, substance use. And we're doing app and wearable-based data capture so that the physician, thousands of kilometers away, have real-time access to this data. One thing I will say is, in all of our projects, they're all co-developed. It is co-led by the end user, whether it's the military, whether it is Canada Post, or whether it is this population here. So this is indigenous co-led. It is in their language. The whole project is really about, the first year or 2 years is about what people would want to see before we actually start the project. So that's been an approach in almost every project we do here. This is the last specific project, again, within the digital sphere. So, again, I'll tell you why we did this. So this is, we have a student mental health center at the University of Toronto, where we have an exercise-based intervention program for student wellness. And we have a program called Move You, Happy You, which was developed a decade ago. It's now actually deployed across multiple universities in Canada. The difficulty is that the trainer, and while I was discussing with them, said, I don't really know if the student is doing physical activity and what physical activity they're doing. So, as I was discussing, I told them that's straightforward. We put them on a wearable, you don't know exactly what activity they're doing. Is it, aerobic or is it strength training activity, the duration, and you can actually tailor the treatment based upon, the kind of activity they're doing. The advantage or the key aspect with this mental health program is that it's a personalized program where the trainer works with the student to enhance student mental health. So we are doing this. Not only that, we give real-time access to their own data to the students as well. So they're able to see their sleep, their activity, all of that on their phone in real time. And, there are a number of interventions which we know work, but people do not really want to do them. So our question is how to keep people more engaged and, get more people to be able to do these things. So this is an ongoing trial. We did a small pilot trial. We showed that, this actually leads to increased engagement and people being more physically active in that youth population. And then we got a more definitive grant to do it on a larger scale. But this is an idea where we took the problem statement and we said, where could the digital, technology help us in terms of enhancing what we're already doing? So I'll end with going back to what I mentioned about how the brain is an electrochemical organ, and we're trying to look at different ways of bringing about change, whether it is through pharmacology, brain stimulation, combination with psychotherapy, or with lifestyle interventions. Stop there.
We have questions that folks would like to ask.
So first of all, Venkat, fantastic presentation, and congratulations on a really, I think, comprehensive and patient-focused program. I think not only are you able to provide, come up with excellent research questions and data, but you're actually able to provide excellent care for your patients and integrate all that together. So and that's I think that's really unique and kudos to you. So I'm curious, you have a kind of algorithm in which people go through and then they can kind of pop out into the kind of research side. So what opportunities are there for patients to combine some of these treatments? Either they kind of exhausted your algorithm, like nothing's really working, let's go back and maybe let's pair the RTMS with the ketamine together. Perhaps they popped out to the SGB, got a little bit of benefit, and maybe per your protocol, they can't get anything else. But since some of the effects of the SGBs last a little bit longer, maybe if we reintroduce them to ketamine or TMS, we can get some kind of synergistic kind of effect.
Yeah. That's a really good question, and at times we try to see, from a research perspective. You do two things. You don't really know when a person gets worse or better. Is it because of the psychotherapy, or is it because of the brain stimulation, or is it because of the pharmacological aspect? So I think we look at this in a sequential way where we demonstrate that there's good evidence with one of them, and then as I mentioned before, it's only a third or 50% of people who improve, and then can we take it to the next step where we do the combination treatments? So the combination treatments usually follow the individual treatments. So I think there are interventions like psilocybin where psychotherapy is the core component. Pharmacological aspect is supposed to accelerate mechanisms of change, but 90% of it is really psychotherapy. And then you have interventions like TMS and ketamine, where it's been thought to be mostly biological. And, the field is now moving towards combinatorial treatment. So it depends on the modality, but in general, we try to demonstrate with one modality and then we do the combination after. We try to be as patient-centric as is possible. If at the end, if people say that they would like to have a combination and they're able to obtain psychotherapy, for example, we have a number of patients and we plan to do a retrospective analysis of that data set where they may have not responded to ketamine, but they're able to get access to psychotherapy. And then they can come back and receive IV ketamine while they're receiving psychotherapy. That's the advantage of us having a clinical program where we don't exclude people. There are some programs, when I set up the program in Toronto, we had a lot of discussion whether it should be front-end research, where if people don't fit criteria for a research trial, then they're not part of the program. But then we decided to do it the way we did with the front end.
Well, what percentage of folks end up with some type of like combination treatment, and then what do the success rates look like for that?
I can say anecdotally, we have not analyzed the data retrospectively, and the other aspect is that retrospective data analysis, you also take that with a grain of salt. It's not randomized prospective control. We do have people who have not responded, who have significant benefit with the combination treatments. A lot of people who come to us have failed intranasal ketamine, and they receive IV ketamine. We have significant people who actually have improvement. So that's one. And then we have people who, we do measurement-based care on all of them. Not only do we do measurement-based care, but we do the objective data capture, the apps and wearables. What we see is at times this subjective component has not really improved much. Like their mattress or PHQ-9 is still the same, but they say that their quality of life is significantly improved. Their work aspects have improved, and it at times parallels the objective data capturing. You see that they're more active. Sleep and activity are two metrics which wearable actually captures well. So, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to do more and more of this with the objective data capture, because that these scales which we do and most of our research, saying this is a responder, this is a remitter, it does not capture the full story of it.
Yes. So when there's a discrepancy between kind of our traditional scales and the kind of objective data, like, how does that change your management? What's your kind of decision algorithm look like when you're not corresponding?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is what the patient says. It is, we can show them the PHQ-9. If there's a huge discrepancy, then that isn't usually the case. It is, the PHQ may have moved by 30%. Traditionally, you would have called them non-responder, but the person says, "I would never get out of bed for 2 days. Now I'm able to have my shower, and I don't need someone else to take care of this or that." That's really meaningful for them. So, when that's the case, since it's a clinical program, we're able to have people come back, let's say for an IV ketamine infusion. To the challenge often is that it's relapsing and remitting, so they're better. They need to have these treatments delivered sequentially, and we don't do maintenance.
You do not do maintenance.
We do not do maintenance. We are still the only program in Toronto where people don't have to pay to receive IV ketamine for treatment-resistant depression. So if we also did maintenance, we'd have liked to, but if we did maintenance, our program would not be function. So we have really focused, like what almost all the clinics with TMS do. It's mostly focused around the acute phase, at least in Toronto, not the maintenance phase. We have built a similar ketamine service as well. We do have plans in the longer run to look at people who have significant improvement, like the ECT model where you would take it down to the minimum frequency required for the prescribing problem. that's in the works. That's dependent upon when we get the foundation philanthropic support to be able to do that. There's also discussion around the ministry being able to fund IV ketamine on a broader scale. If that happens, then we'll have the capacity to be able to offer maintenance.
You know, your research is uncovering some limitations to the screening instruments for depression. And you mentioned that, you know, the PHQ might not change as a function. Would the diagnosis change? So if you were like talking to that client who was talking about, I can get up, I can do these tasks, would you then move them out of the major depression category?
Yeah. You know, we offer the treatments in a clinical context. If it's a research trial, we would do the mini or the skate, and we would go through every comorbidity they have and really strictly inclusion, exclude. But in the clinical setting, as long as they have depression and they don't have a contraindication to receiving IV ketamine, we actually administer IV ketamine, which means we go with every comorbidity conceivable, like anxiety, PTSD, you know, most medical comorbidities. We don't do medical assistance in dying, just in you know, that we don't do. But for almost all other medical comorbidities with severe depression, since it is, you know, it's anesthesia and psychiatry working together, we have the capacity to be able to deliver ketamine. One of the things which we do is to go back and see, you know, how big was the depression in this person? Was it borderline personality disorder? Was the PTSD component the driver of the you know, what was the driver? Was depression in the backseat, with PTSD being the driver? What we also notice often is people have depression and suicidality, and their symptoms on the depression scale have not improved, but they said, I've had suicidal ideation all my life, it's just gone. I have no suicidal ideation at all, but the symptoms of depression have not improved. So we often see improvement in specific aspects, even within depression, when they say overall, rest of the depression has not improved. I still don't have energy. My appetite has not improved at all. I'm not moving around. But that suicidal thought, which I just could not get out of my head, it's gone. For 20 years, I've struggled. So you know, I would say maybe 20 to 30% of the patients, given that we don't have strict exclusion criteria, we have these interesting scenarios where, you know, our primary outcome is not improved, but a number of the other secondary outcomes have actually.
Thank you to Dr. Bhat for a wonderful presentation.